Hey guys, it's Josh here, and today I'm going to talk to you about the meditation practice that changed my life. Now, this is my personal story of how I transformed my anxiety into alignment, and really, it all started because I was scared of my own mind. Back when I was a teenager, I was really scared of my own mind, right? I was afraid of the world and of life. And I really had this kind of like existential crisis where I was questioning the meaning of everything. I was wondering why we're even here. What does it all mean? And this happened to me back in 2010, right? When I was 17 years this is when it all started. This is when I started to get really anxious. This is when I started to practice meditation. And this is when I had that existential crisis where I was just questioning what it meant to be alive and what it meant to be a person. Now, in hindsight, that was the beginning of everything that changed for me. Now, back then, it was horrible. Back then, it was a really hard experience and it was really confusing. And it left me, just kind of scratching my head and again, very fearful of life, very fearful of my own mind. I was constantly worried about stuff. I was constantly overthinking everything. And it left me just feeling overwhelmed, right? That was back in 2010, right, when I was 17 years old. Now, just for a little bit more context, uh, you know, my parents split up when I was like 11 or 12 years old, and dad left, and so they became a little bit unstable. I'm the eldest of four kids, so I became quite rebellious. I didn't really have anyone telling me what to do during my teenage years. So then I started to become very, yeah, rebellious. I would lash out. I would do whatever I wanted. I would often go and hang out at the skate park. Um, it was more than often. I basically lived at the skate park. And so I started drinking, I started doing drugs, and I started hanging out with the wrong crowd. I got in trouble with police. I ended up dropping out of school in grade 10. And yeah, my teens were a mess, like a bit of a mess, really. And if you ask even my family or anyone who knew me back then in my teens, I was all over the place, right? I was literally all over the place. But when I, came to be about 17, I started to realize I was like, if I keep living like this, it's not going to be good. It's not going to lead me down a good path, and it's going to be not very pretty. So for some strange, unknown reason to me, I started meditating, right? I started meditation. Now, the reason why it's strange is because no one around me was meditating. Like my parents definitely didn't meditate. My friends definitely didn't meditate. Everyone around me was drinking and doing drugs at that time of my life. That was literally everyone, including my parents, right? My parents didn't do drugs, but they were definitely drinking. And my friends, they all did drugs and they were all drinking. And so really my environment was just people who were drinking and doing drugs. Okay. So how I started to meditate is really a miracle. I honestly think it's a miracle, right? And the reason why, because people do often ask me, like, why did you start meditating? Right? I've done talks and stuff over the last 5 years where I've shared my story, and people have asked me, like, what do you think made you start meditating? And honestly, I used to smoke a lot of weed. And when I was smoking weed with my friends, we would all talk about conspiracy theories, right? So we'd be into conspiracy theories and stuff like that. And I found this blog page. I remember, and we'd read stuff and we'd watch stuff and, all these conspiracy theories about the government and all this kind of stuff. And I found this blog page, which was called The Mind Unleashed. And on that blog page, there was all these conspiracy theories, but there was also a tab for spirituality. And I found myself reading this tab for spirituality. And I remember reading this one blog post, and it was around the time I was 16, 17 years old, which basically said, if you start meditating in your late teens, early 20s, you will be an absolute superhuman by the time you're in your mid 20s. And so for me, as I was starting to become a very anxious, very confused, overwhelmed teenager, this idea that I would be able to become a superhuman by the time I was 25 was sounding pretty good to me back then, right? And so I started meditation. And that's kind of how I got into it, right? I didn't tell anyone else what I was doing. I didn't tell my friends what I was doing. I didn't tell my family what I was doing. I told no one that I was meditating. I just started meditating for my own personal practice. Okay. And I did that for a long time. Didn't really tell anyone, just did it for myself, just for my own mental well being and my own mental health. And it really helped me a lot because I learned how to let go of my thoughts. I learned how to stop thinking so much and stop being so caught up in my mind. And that helped me with my mental health and my anxiety a lot. Okay. Now, it didn't fix everything though. And I'll tell you why. Because I kept drinking and I kept doing drugs. And so I meditated for 10 years, right? Whilst still doing drugs and alcohol. I started when I was, 17 in 2010. And I kept doing drugs and alcohol until I was in, 2019. That's when I decided to go sober. And the reason I decided to go sober was because I was really struggling with alcoholism. We have alcoholism in our family, and I struggled with alcoholism even though I was meditating, right? Now, the reason why meditation practice was so helpful for me in going sober is because when you practice meditation every single day, you have a disciplined practice, you develop willpower, you develop persistence. And that's what I needed to help me go sober, right? Because I always talk about meditation as like a training ground, right? It's like a training ground for life. So you go and you practice meditation, or for me, I was practicing meditation, and it was helping me deal with life. It didn't mean that it solved all of my life's problems, but it helped me deal with life, and it helped me develop some qualities and some skills that helped me to deal with life. And so when I was in 2019, I decided to go sober because I was struggling with drinking, I had a relationship blow up. I got fired from a job, and I hit rock bottom. In 2019, it was the time when I first experienced a deep depression, the kind of depression where you can't even leave the house, and it's hard to even get out of bed and put your clothes on. I remember at that time in my life, I was just calling my friends, just crying, because I was so sad and so depressed. And that's when I realized something needs to change and I need to go sober. Okay. And I did that. I had tried to go sober in this period of time, over the last 10 years, between 2010 and 2019, and failed. I had unsuccessfully tried to go sober multiple times. But in 2019, I made the firm decision. I put the kind of flag in the ground, and, I drew the line in the sand, and I said, I'm going sober for a year. And so I did that. I went sober for a year. And again, my meditation practice helped me so much because of willpower and focus and concentration and discipline and commitment. And that's why I successfully went sober in 2019. And that led me to the biggest transformation in my life, right? The meditation was the fundamental, was the foundation. If I didn't start this meditation practice back here, then maybe I would never have achieved this. And because I achieved this, I had an incredible transformation in 2020, right? The thing is, right, when you are experiencing like alcoholism or addiction, right, you're in a low consciousness, okay? And that's because you've got shame and guilt, right? Pretty much all addicts have unprocessed shame and guilt, and that's why they drink or do drugs or do whatever they do to escape it, right? So back here, I was in this low level of consciousness, even though I was meditating. In 2022, I shifted my consciousness. I learned to process my guilt. I learned to process my regrets. I learned to process my shame. I confronted all of my demons because I had to, because I was sober. And through that process, I became so clear. I became so connected to myself. And I really started to experience some extraordinary synchronicities, and opportunities just started to present themselves to me during this year after I went sober, once I had really transformed myself. This is actually the year, 2020 is the year that I became a meditation teacher. I never thought that I would be a meditation teacher. When I started practicing meditation back here, I never thought that I would be a meditation teacher. It was not something that was in my mind, right? And even here, I still didn't think that would be the case. But here, the opportunity just presented itself. I was ready. I wasn't ready before these periods of time, right? But 10 years after I had started my meditation practice, I was ready to become a teacher. And again, it was not something that I thought I would be doing. When I was drinking, I was not in integrity with being a teacher. But once I got sober and I transformed my life and I processed my guilt and my shame, the opportunity just presented itself to me. And so many other synchronicities happened where things just started to line up for me, right? It was amazing. So 2021, right? I become a teacher, right? I started teaching my first classes. I started teaching workshops. I started teaching courses. And I found purpose, right? 2021 was when I became a teacher and when I found purpose in my life. Okay. Now, I should also mention in these years, I didn't have a job. I wasn't able to hold down a job for more than a year. I've been a teacher and a coach for 5 years now. Before this, I wasn't able to hold down a job for more than 1 year. And ever since I became a meditation teacher, I've been holding it down for 5 years. Okay. So I became a teacher and I started living my purpose. And this is important because I think I needed to become this man who had a strong purpose and who was doing purposeful work for what was coming next, right? And that is, I can only call it sacred union, right? So I don't know if you can see this, but there's my wife, right? I got my two biggest achievements behind me, my meditation teacher training and my wife. And so this happened in 2022, right? Sacred Union, I found her. We met in January 2022. We conceived the child in about March, April, and we got married in November and we had our baby in December, all in 2022. So it was an incredible year, 2022, right? It was a crazy year, and everything happened, and it was incredible. So since then, right, we have just been living this incredible life, and I'm not trying to brag or anything. I'm just saying this is just what happened. Okay, now we have alignment, right? So this is how I explain it to people. We want to find alignment in life. For me, I got myself clean and clear. I transformed myself. I became a teacher, which was, again, it was a synchronicity. I never expected it to happen. I found purpose. I found sacred union with my wife, or, partnership, marriage, whatever you want to call it. Had a child. And now 2025, we have our second child on the way, and it's total alignment. And it's really a shift in consciousness as well from here, right? Now we have higher consciousness. Okay, so this is love, peace, and joy. And again, it's not perfect. I'm not trying to pretend that it is. I'm not trying to brag and say that we have everything. We still have our troubles. We still go through stuff. But it's definitely a significant change from here to here. And I think it's pretty clear. Like, this is my story. This is exactly what's happened for me over the last 15 years. And this is how the meditation practice has changed my life. None of, when you might start doing something and it might seem like an insignificant thing. So for me, back in 2010, I started meditation. I was doing 10 minutes a day. It wasn't a life-changing thing. It was just a small habit that I developed. But if I had not developed that habit, I probably wouldn't have been able to go sober. I wouldn't have transformed my life. I probably wouldn't have become a teacher. Definitely wouldn't have become a teacher. Wouldn't have found my purpose. Wouldn't have found my wife, and wouldn't have found alignment in life. So this thing that I did, right, back here, really did change my life. And I wanted to share this story because, people are often looking for this like big thing that's going to change their life. But often it's not the big thing. Often it's just some little things that you can start doing to change your life. And so if you want to learn how to practice meditation, again, even just 10 minutes a day, focusing on your breathing, focusing on allowing your thoughts to be there instead of trying to push them away, right? Practicing observing. And if you do that, right, over time, you will shift your consciousness and you will enter into alignment. Okay. Now, if you want more help with this, then I'm going to put a video or a free training in the description below. There's a free training on how I can help you go from anxiety to alignment. So if you would like some support, if you would like some guidance, if you would like some accountability on this journey, because I know that can be hard, right? When you don't have any support, you don't have any accountability, it can be hard to stick to it. And also, if you just don't know what you're doing, it can be hard to stick to it. Again, I was blessed back in 2020, 2010 to learn all of this stuff. And now it's just my mission to help others with this stuff. So if you want to master your mind, if you want to transform your anxiety and find alignment in life, go watch that other video about how I can help you. And yeah, thanks for watching this video. I'll see you soon. Bye.